Good evening, folks, and welcome back to the Celtic Unrestricted View. I'm JP, and joining me this evening is Big Barry McCandless and young Daniel. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we, Baz? I'll start with you, mate. You've probably not been on as much as myself and Daniel of recent, mate. But it's really good to see you, mate, and I'm looking forward to this wee chat with you tonight.
Hey, JP. Good to see you, mate. Good to be on, Daniel. Nice to meet you, pal. Looking forward to having a wee bit of rapport with you tonight. And to all the viewers, thanks for being here. And looking forward to having a wee chat.
Yep, and the same goes to yourself there, Daniel.
Good evening, JP. Evening, Barry. Nice to meet you, mate. Looking forward to getting a wee chat about the whole season. Good evening, everybody. Looking forward to getting into what I would say is a successful season for the club again.
Aye, it's exciting. I've been looking forward to this all day, boys. I don't know about yours, but yes, folks, very warm welcome and good evening to everybody that's tuning in with us across the platforms. I hope you are all well. As you can see on the banner, it says the road to 4 in a row, and this is part 1 because there is a part 2 to follow this, and I believe that's going to be getting recorded tomorrow. And part 2 won't be myself, Barry, and Daniel. It will consist of Ryan Allen and William Glavin, who's been on the channel throughout the season. So we thought we'd do an end-of-season review, and basically that's why we're here tonight, is to conduct the first part of that end of season. So, lads, we'll just get straight into it. Obviously, the first part I'm just going to come to. So the start of Celtic being back on an opportunity for the fans to see Celtic back. Barry, I'll come to yourself first for this one. We cast my memory back to the 5th of July 2024 when Celtic returned and they play against former Celtic captain, a very successful one at that, Scott Brown's Ayr United teammate. Sorry just to hit you with this, but aye, what was your early thoughts seeing the team being back and obviously watching the opposition we were up against?
Well, at that time, you're just itching for Celtic to be back, aren't you? You would, no matter the opposition, no matter how you need to see that game, you're wanting to watch it because you're trying to look for any signs. Is this different? Is the system changed? Has there more players around? The intrigue is heightened. But it was a sentimental match at that point because it's up against wee Bruni. So it was just good to see him in the opposite dugout to Brendan. An odd thing to see as well, but good fun, good fun. And you've got to start somewhere. That was a nice, easy way to sort of get things moving again, get the wheels turning, So the actual game itself, I don't think it was much of a spectacle, to be fair. I know Kyogo got a penalty and it finished 1-1, but it's just, that was the start, wasn't it?
It was, aye. And obviously, Daniel, I know previously, mate, you've mentioned that you never got to see that game. So, obviously, looking back at it, what was your early thoughts looking in on it?
I think Barry hits the nail on the head there. It's just everybody's excited to get a Celtic game. Obviously, it was a bit of a sentimental one with Scott Brown being in the dugout. But for what I've seen, it was a much changed Celtic team. So it was just it was very a friendly kind of like testimonial kind of vibe. Do you get me? Rather than a competitive fixture. But it was a good way to start the season. Obviously, Scott Brown and Ayr United, they were looking to kick on and try and show everybody what they were about. And we were the club to give them a bit of a platform to be able to do that.
Yeah, Big Rab's just asking there to be live or to be recorded. No, I can 100% assure you, mate, we are definitely live, hence the reason why you're even comments being put up on the screen for you, because if it's recorded, unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So we are live, mate. Glad you can join us. Just going through some of the comments. Obviously, Ryan's commented on Evening Lads. Good to see Barry back on. Make mine a double. I don't know what he's meaning, double decker. I don't know. I've not got a clue what he's, Ryan, boys. I don't know what he's but he's wanted doubly. Obviously, moving on to a couple of days later, boys, we then take on Queen's Park on the 10th of July, and that scoreline finishes 6-4 to Celtic. Daniel, obviously, I'll come to you with the thoughts on that one. Did you manage to see that one back, pal?
For what I remember, did Queen's Park no open the scoring?
They did. Aye.
They did, aye. So obviously, that was a bit of a shocker straight after the bat. Don't think we were really expecting to concede to them at all. But we managed to get ourselves comfortable in the game, and then obviously the difference in the class showed with the final scoreline. But I think it was a bit of a wake up to maybe the boys who were starting the game. Like, you can't stroll. You know what I mean? Every team that's going to try and play against Celtic, even if it is a pre-season friendly, are going to come into the game with the intent to win it and make a name for themselves. So, it was good to see the attack start to get flowing and get used to scoring goals. But I think the opening kind of half an hour of the game was pretty surprising, to be honest.
Barry, that's the thing about these games, isn't it? Like you says earlier, mate, you're looking in, everybody wants their Celtic fix again, you're looking in these games, but these games are also just as important as probably your first league game of the season, because you want to see how the team's shaping up, what kind of fitness level the team's in, and as Daniel's just said there, mate, it's important for the players to recognise early that, you know, I need to do something here, otherwise I'm either going to find myself either on loan or out of the club permanently.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones. I think that game was, I think Celtic's pre-season really started when we went to America. I think these games, I mean, we still had people coming back from international duty at that point as well. I think that the team was a lot of young boys in it as well. And listen, I think those games, they're really just a fitness thing. You know, the actual scoreline, even performance, I'm not sure how much scrutiny is put on the actual performances that early. I think it's just more about fitness and just reminding, you know, getting that kind of muscle memory going. I don't think there's much analysis put into individual performances or anything like that. I know you're going to move on, but I think when we got to America, I think that's when Celtic started to really go, we're now preparing for our season.
Yeah. And just as Baz says there, Daniel, we definitely are. We've already jumped on a big plane and we've moved on to Sunday the 21st of July. And by this time, the hoops are in America, mate.
Yep.
And we take on DC United and Celtic run out 4-0 winners, mate. What's your thoughts there? Because my initial thoughts there is it looked impressive. And I was really intrigued to see the way, you know, with the attacking intent that we went about that against a decent level of opposition at that time of pre-season.
Yep, definitely. I feel our attack was definitely the highlight of that match. But it was good to see a relatively strong team starting, and it was just like you mentioned before, just seeing that shape. And then obviously the attack intent going forward. I thought Celtic were absolutely sublime in that game. The attack just never looked unsettled at any point. I feel like they just ran all over the top of DC United's defence. I think their goalkeeper actually managed to keep the scoreline down, because it should have been about 6 or 7, pushing 8. But their goalie played a blinder, even though he did concede 4. But I think the 4 that he conceded were just unlucky, whereas he had a great game. So Celtic attack was absolutely outstanding in that game, I feel.
Yeah, and Barry, obviously, as Daniel mentions about the goalkeeper, he was diving about that much and I actually remember the commentator mentioning this. He's dived about that much. He's ended up injured and had to go off and be replaced in the game for the other goalie. So it just shows you how busy Celtic kept the guy that night.
Yeah, well, Daniel opened up with saying that it was a really successful season, and I'm going to echo that. It was that season past there was excellent, and you can track it all the way back to pre-season. and all the way back to this game in particular, because there was a strong growing sense in those games in America that Brendan and the team had been laser focused on how they were going to play. And this was coming over the screens. You could see it, it was tangible. You could notice there was a difference in the way Celtic were playing. The pace that we were playing at had been up a gear, maybe even two. And then that was a criticism of Brendan in his first season back, that sometimes the football was a bit laboured, sometimes it was overly possession based.
Yeah.
I could see in that game against DC United, I could see quantifiable differences in how Celtic were playing. At that time, though, the big takeaway for that game for me was Matt O'Reilly. He was absolutely outstanding in that game. Scored twice, could have had a hat trick. And at that time, there was a lot of rumours about would they stay, would they go. We all know the story. He ended up he did leave. But again, to go back to Daniel's comment about it being a successful season, Celtic went on to have a top class season, and yet once again sold their best player in the summer, Matt O'Reilly, for a heavy profit. And you know yourself, I'm always beating the drum about the way the clubs run. Let's not miss that out in this review here. We sold our best player for reportedly £30 million. I think something.
What was your thoughts on that, Barry? See, when that happened, Barry, what was running through your head, mate? What were you thinking then?
Well, my thoughts were what they always are. As long as we get the right money for a player, I'm fine with it. I accept the transfer model. I accept it. I accept that that's how we build a football club. We've got the power that we've got as a club now because of that player trading model. And to sign a player for £2.5 million, whatever it was with Matt O'Reilly, to then go and sell him for £30 million, that. And again, final
I knew
comment.
this was actually going to come up, so I was prepared for this, Barry. It was actually 1.5 million we bought him for.
Very, very high. You're talking £28.5 million profit.
Yeah.
Celtic cannot say no to that kind of money, But what I would say as well is that Matt O'Reilly, the season before that, wasn't going anywhere for £30 million. Brendan Rodgers worked his magic on him, and one full season under Brendan's coaching, and the guy was up to £30 million. It wasn't nice to see him go, of course, because he was an excellent player.
Yeah.
But the board and Celtic went on to replace him as best they could, and that's up for debate. But yeah, that was my big takeaway for that game. I thought Matt O'Reilly was outstanding, but the bigger picture was I could see Brendan had really got his teeth into the job at that point, because I could see changes in how they were playing.
Yeah, I agree. I think those changes, lads, were really noticeable. And that was a game for me that really kicked things off in terms of the way we were going to play last season.
Yeah.
I'm saying last season. I know it's just finished, but it feels mental even saying that. But last season, because we're now in the close season now and ready to go to another one. But I could see right away how Celtic were setting up, and that was impressive. It really was. Because like I says, lads, that was a really strong test for us end up against a side who were well into their season as well. They were well ahead. And normally when Celtic play teams like this, when you've seen it years gone by, when we've had more than one Champions League qualifier and stuff, we've found it tricky against those kind of teams because they're so far ahead in their season. And it looks like we're still in friendly mode, whereas these teams are like 15, 20 games into their season. So, no, I can't agree more, mate, in terms of Matt O'Reilly. But Daniel, obviously bringing you back in the Matt O'Reilly thing, he was outstanding in that game. But what was your thoughts in terms of Celtic? He then moves on.
I feel like when we watched him that season under Brendan, I felt like as a fan base, we all knew he was going to be gone. We didn't know for how much. All we knew is that it was going to happen. We didn't know where he was going either. So I felt like it was just a matter of time before the right money or the right move came in for him. And I agree with Barry. Like with that sort of profit margin, you can't knock that back. Obviously, he does leave the club on a record transfer fee, which sets us up lovely moving forward into the season. But I definitely agree with Barry when he's saying we lost our best player, 100%, and then we go again, stroll the league. Do you know what I mean? So the club that way is moving in the right direction, but I feel like there's many tweaks that could be made to it. But on Matt O'Reilly, I feel I was a huge fan of him, even way back under Ange. When he came into the club, I always liked the way he played, but he definitely went up a gear under Brendan's coaching, and that's how we managed to get the money for him that we did.
Yeah, 100%, lads. I can't agree more. Moving on swiftly, obviously Celtic then move into the 24th of July, where we take on Manchester City. Now, before that, Celtic now sign Kasper Schmeichel and Sinisalo, both as goalkeeping prospects for the team moving into the new season. Barry, obviously bringing you in the Kasper Schmeichel signing. What was your thoughts when we signed Kasper? Were you happy, or did you think? I know some Celtic fans were, holding reservations because of his age and everything else, but for me, it was just a no-brainer. I mean, that was just an unbelievable signing and coup for us at that time.
Yeah, no, same. Tremendous signing. That was my first reaction, and we didn't have to pay any money for it. It was just an absolutely fantastic coup. And I know some folk around about that time were saying that it was a panic signing because the amount of time had went on and we hadn't signed a goalkeeper. We knew Joe Hart was leaving. I didn't see it that way. To me, it seemed like, Brendan had already had that in the pipeline. That was going to happen. He'd probably spoke to Kasper, weeks before it, if not even months before it. And that was going to happen. And he had just finished for Denmark, I think, a few weeks prior to that. So, and he played every game for them. So I didn't have any concerns about his ability or age being a factor. The way I looked at it was, that's the goalkeeping situation solved. And I was just pleased that they had backed that signing up with getting a number 2 goalkeeper in Sinisalo, albeit I didn't know a great deal about him. But I was just pleased to see that in one fell swoop, they had sorted that position.
Yeah, and obviously then that game comes around, Daniel, and Celtic take on Manchester City. Kasper makes his kind of debut for the team, and Celtic won 4-3, mate. At that point, man, where's your head? Because you're going, right, Man City have just won the Premier League, and they've no long won the Champions League with Guardiola. Yep. I'm jumping on the living room that we've won the Champions League. Honestly, I'm celebrating like a daft wee boy, and I've watched Kasper pulling off save after save off Erling Haaland, who at that point was probably one of the best strikers in the business. Where's your head at that point, mate?
I remember just sitting watching that game in absolute disbelief at how comfortable and how brilliant Celtic played against, at that time, the best team in the world. I just couldn't believe it. Obviously, it was a slightly changed squad for Manchester City, but they still had their big hitters like Erling Haaland on the pitch, and our goalkeeper save after save after save after save, and our attack sliced them open every time we went forward.
Yeah.
Rio Hitati, when he played in that game, was outstanding. Nicholas Kuhn as well was another amazing performance. I was just, because I watched it, obviously it was late at night, but I watched it in my bed and I was just shocked. Like, I didn't have any words. The goals just kept getting in, and I was like, because I kept expecting Manchester City to come back into the game and take dominance, and then every time they hurt back, Celtic went up the pitch and scored, and I was just like, what is this team? Do you know what I mean? What are we? If this is any indication for our season, then we are in for a spectacular season.
Yeah, Barry, obviously yourself, mate. Where's your head at, man, watching that game?
Well, first of all, I was aware that it wasn't Man City's strongest team. But like Daniel said, it still had quality all over the pitch. I mean, we were still up against a team that, in its own right, would have held its own in the English Premier League. That 100%. Team that, and of course, they had Haaland on the pitch. I thought our football that day was unbelievable. And again, I go back to this was Brendan's methods really getting ingrained in these players.
Yeah,
and you could see Brendan's ability as a coach in those games, because I could see the difference in how they were playing. We were playing the ball through the lines quicker. We were moving from defence to attack much quicker than I had seen Brendan's team the season before it. But the standout for me in that game was Nicholas Kuhn. I think I watched the game and I went, wow, who is that? I hadn't seen that for Nicholas Kuhn. And I'm watching it going, wow, if he can perform like that, even close to that, he's going to have some season, which it turned out to be. And I think the other thing is as you're saying about Kasper Schmeichel, I think anybody who watched that game who had any reservations about Kasper Schmeichel, they were gone. Because
100%.
you witnessed a world-class goalkeeper in that game.
You could see how frustrated Erling Haaland was becoming in the game, and it was a friendly, I loved it before the game, lads, when they were getting out of tunnel, and you see Jack Grealish going over and giving Callum McGregor a big cuddle, and the two of them having a good chat and stuff, because they were obviously on loan together at Notts County as younger lads. And it was good to see, obviously, that side of things, but when Celtic went on the pitch, man, there was no prisoners being taken at all. Celtic we set about Man City, and Guardiola, I mean, the camera spun to him a couple of times, and Guardiola's kind of standing scratching his head going, I took on Celtic in the Champions League a couple of years ago and they never played like this. Well, he was like, you could see it in him as if to say, what's going on? But I don't know if you talk about Nicholas Kuhn, Barry. I don't know if you can remember this, lads. Can you remember he's outside of the boot pass round the corner to Kyogo?
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, it's Man City. It's no as if, it's no St Johnson or it's Rafe Rovers or something he's getting, he's not going to get compared greatly to. It's Manchester City. They've just won the Premier League, for crying out loud. And as Barry says there, Daniel, when you see a guy like Nicholas Kuhn performing like that, mate, you're kind of going at yourself, this is a Nicholas Kuhn who took criticism, by the way, from the Celtic fans in the season previously when he came in the January. And people are standing going, I hope I've kept the receipt on him, by the way, because he's not going to be up there. I know you're laughing there, Barry, but that's what people were saying, mate. Cast your mind back to the January when he came in. People are going, what's going on? And then they found out about this problem he had in his mouth and everything going on. So, Daniel, when we started to see Kuhn at that point, mate, and that was the Nicholas Kuhn that we knew, obviously then what transpired and what was going into the season. I mean, you're rubbing your hands together, man. You're going, here we go.
And I think our pre-season and Nicholas Kuhn especially, like you mentioned, JP, having that confidence to play that kind of pass against Manchester City, that just encapsulated the whole of the pre-season. Celtic had this newfound confidence. They weren't scared of anybody. They weren't reserved. They just went out, played their football, stuck to their task, and dominated most of the games that we played, to be quite honest, against teams who, on their right day, should be beating us by a few goals. Do you know what I mean? So I felt like Kuhn, especially in pre-season, we found the one that was going to step up to the plate to be that guy when Matt O'Reilly was obviously leaving. So I definitely feel that Kuhn's pre-season encapsulated all of Celtic's pre-season and just giving that team that fresh confidence.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I can't agree more. Moving on swiftly, as we always like to do on this channel, the 27th of July, Celtic then go and take on another big Premier League club who spend a lot of money in Chelsea. And it just so happens that, we're talking about Man City and how we play against them. We just kick into that game and Celtic going 1-4-1. Barry, at this point, mate, what's going through your head here, man? Because you're going like that yourself. Wow. And by the way, at the point then, this is a Chelsea team that have just won the Europa Conference League as well. They're now, the Europa Conference Cup. So at that point, mate, what's going through your head? Because all your Maduekis and all these kind of lads were all in that team that and we just took them apart. So you're thinking to yourself, what's going on? And by that point, Barry, I think it's really fair to say there was a clear stamp of identity by Brendan on, the way things were going to go at that point.
Yeah. I think there was a clear identity for Brendan back to DC United. I really think it started there. But the work that Brendan and his staff done with the team over the summer, a lot of that would have been done, in-house as well, not just on the training field, but these coaching sessions that they do in front of the big screens, and it's all meticulous detail. So I think a lot of that would have been done as well. But that game against Chelsea, again, just felt like they were going through the gears again, because there was a degree of comfort in that game. I think we won it 4-1.
Yeah.
And the reason that, more than the Man City victory, that one, I think that one was even more gripping, because you were up against a side who themselves were working on an identity, and they had a new manager in, and he went in there with, Maresca was on the back of a successful season with Leicester City, and he was keen to put his stamp on that Chelsea team.
Yeah.
So Chelsea played to win that game. Chelsea were playing that game to win, and they put out a strong team, and Maresca was looking for them to get momentum. So it was a fixture in its own right, that game, and we won it comfortably. The most shocking thing I have to say is the fact that Palma scored, and he had scored against City as well. I mean, if you're asking, what was the biggest surprise, like, Palma scored back-to-back games against Premier League opposition, and at the time, Palma's one of these players. We've all had them early years. I think Haksabanovic was one of these guys as well. These are certain players at Celtic you're going, maybe he could still come good. And I was getting a wee bit of that with Palma when he played those back-to-back games, but it didn't last very long. But I think the impressive thing with the Chelsea game was you could see Celtic were figuring out how to attack and how to go through the lines and how to get their goals. But at the same time, you could see we were getting a bit cuter, how to keep the back door closed as well. So that was the kind of, you could see the progression,
Yeah, 100%. And I think America, for me, lads, really, really summed up and really set us up for the start of our domestic campaign. It really, really put us in a good stead, because I remember at that time chatting with Ryan from the channel, and me and Ryan always, Celtic don't normally start well in pre-season. We normally don't see Celtic do that well in pre-season, and you're thinking to yourself, I just hope they've no peaked too early. And then for they come into the start of the season, then they start dropping points, they start drawing or getting beaten. We were having a wee laugh and a chuckle. But wow, what a start to the pre-season and to bring us into the season. Now, Daniel, obviously season kicks off at this point in the 4th of August. Celtic take on Kilmarnock at Parkhead, Flag Day, and the raising of the flag and the curtain goes up. And then Celtic run out 4-0 winners, mate. So, again, I thought it was just a continuation from what we've seen in America.
Yeah.
I mean, the score, by the way, before MD thinks I'm showing off, I'm definitely no. This is the only game I've actually took note of who scored for us. And I've just so happened to have wrote it down. So don't think for a minute I'm going to go through every game here knowing all the scorers, because I'm not, and I don't claim to be that clever. But that day we had Rio Atati, Liam Scales, Nicholas Kuhn and Anthony Ralston as goal scorers. Yep. So again, mate, how are you feeling at that point and obviously looking at that game?
Like you says, I feel like it was just a continuation to what we'd seen in America. We come out, we play fantastic again. Big statement win to start the season. But I felt like with the domestic campaign, we needed to hit with a big win straight off the bat, because we come off the back of quite a close run title. Obviously, we ended up winning it by a few points in the end, but they did give us a good chase up until the end of the season. So it comes out and sets a precedent for moving forward that we're not here to mess about this season. We're going to kick on. And it just, off the back of that Chelsea game, it just proved that relentlessness that a lot of fans seem to miss with Brendan previously. Like, we would go a couple of goals up and then we would sit back and that would be it. But no, this time I think Anthony Ralston's was a stoppage time goal. Do you know what I mean? So we kept going right up until the end. and we were just ruthless in the chances that we were getting. And I felt like that just sent a bit of a message to the rest of the league that we're not here to mess about. We're here to get in, get a job done, and keep going.
Yeah, and Baz, obviously yourself, mate, thinking on that game and seeing Celtic firing, as Daniel says, impressed again, mate?
Yeah, I think by this point, obviously Brendan's been back a season. Daniel highlights it there. You know, there was a title race. We did go on and complete a double, and I think by the end of that season, the way we done the double, the cup final obviously against them, I think a lot of Celtic fans, that there was a growing sense of unity happening between the fans and Brendan and the club as well, and that carried on into pre-season. I think the games in pre-season whetted our appetite, and you know, I think I speak for most Celtic fans. We were just looking forward to the games coming. That excitement was there. You were looking forward to watching your team play, and they didn't disappoint on Flag Day. Thought they were absolutely fantastic. The football, you know, you could see that excitement. You could see, you know, the pace had went up. The team were playing to score as many goals as they could, and it was entertaining. And you know, entertainment in football, as a Celtic fan, for me, entertainment, it is a luxury, but it's a luxury that we're so used to at Celtic. So, you know, there's a craving there to see your team play well and score goals, and they didn't disappoint. In fact, by then I think they went on I think they won their first 9 games domestically. So, and
Don't jump the gun. We'll get to that. Don't jump. You've just spoiled the surprise for everybody, big man.
I know, but I'm just conscious of time, JP. You know, I'm being considerate to you. But yeah, it was a great start to the campaign, and on Flag Day, you know, and I think Daniel's spot on what he says there as well. Because it was a close title race the season prior to that, you do want to put a marker down right away. And you're on mute.
No, that's fine, mate. I didn't want to cough in everybody's ears there, so just for highlighting that again, big man. You're on a roll tonight, man. I tell you, something like that. So Daniel, obviously moving on for there, we then from the 11th of August to the 18th of August, we play back-to-back games against Hibs. Now, one of them is at Easter Road, where we won 2-0. And then the next one is again on the 18th, which is a League Cup. Now, the first round of the League Cup's always a good one because you want to try and that's when we hadn't won that the season before, and I know Brendan had mentioned that in interviews that he wanted to do well. And then we batter Hibs 3-1 at Celtic Park.
Yep.
What's your thoughts there, mate? Because again, that's a tough set. Going to Easter Road and winning 2-0 is obviously a tough thing to do first and foremost, because we've always known the best of records are going there. And then obviously you're looking into the game at Celtic Park, and you've won 5-1 in aggregate really over the 2 games. So again, mate, what are you thinking there?
I feel like that game at Easter Road coming so early in the season was huge for Brendan, because we know that Celtic in recent times have never really performed, let's say, when we go to Easter Road. But again, that just further stretches that marker out that we are here, because I think we scored 2 fantastic goals. I think one of them, Cal McGregor, from outside the box. We scored 2 great goals and we dominate the game. So again, I feel like it further extends that marker and sends that message of, nah, we're not here to mess about. And then obviously the game at Parkhead, we concede, but it's a set piece, and then we never really looked out of place. Like, even when we did concede, we just go back into our rhythm, and then we go and score 2 goals again. And again, it's just comfortable, confident on the ball, that fast-paced attack that we knew had started to become accustomed to with Celtic. I would say that.
So Barry, obviously at that point, mate, bearing in mind this isn't a Hibs side that we were accustomed to see towards the end of the season, mate, that went on and finished third. They didn't get off to the best of starts, and they were fighting with Hearts to see who was actually at the start of the season. If the game had finished in 3 weeks, I think Hibs or Hearts would have been relegated, mate. So at that point, the season wasn't going too well for them. Again, as Daniel says there, about the 2 games, so quick fire, mate. What was your thoughts there? Celtic obviously came out very victorious on both.
Yeah, well, Brendan doesn't have the best record at Easter Road. I think it's one of the grounds that, if he hold his record up against every other team, that would be the one that he would fall short on. But it was the front three for me. You were seeing Kuhn, Kyogo, Maeda. It was the fluidness in the football. It was the running in behind. It was the goals being spread amongst them. And we just looked a constant threat. We just looked like, the dynamics were right. It looked to me like Brendan had figured out what way this team were going to play, and it was just locked in at that point. And there was a growing sense that it was going to get better and better. And I know you're taking us in a certain direction here, so I'm not going to jump the gun. I really want to hear, but I'm not going to do it. But,
I like you, big man.
I know. But I'm going to be respectful. You're the host. But no, you could just feel at that time that Celtic were going through the gears, and that they were really just sort of getting up ahead of steam. They hadn't even hit, dare you say it, they hadn't even hit their full speed yet.
Yeah. And then obviously after those two Hibs games, we come back to league action, Daniel. And we go away to St Mirren on the 25th of August, mate. And we go and we battle them 3-0. So at that point, mate, bearing in mind, in the league so far, we've beat Kilmarnock 4-0, we've beat Hibs 2-0, and then we go to St Mirren, we win 3-0. So at this point, mate, we've not even conceded a goal yet in the league.
Yep.
So where's your thoughts there?
I feel like that game was huge because in recent years, Celtic have went to St Mirren and maybe no turned up as well defensively, and then we've ended up losing a slack goal, even though we do win a couple of games. We lose like a wee slack goal in the end. But I feel that game definitely shored us up as this defensive unit is starting to come together. They're starting to show how to keep the door shut, because I don't think in that run of games where Casper hadn't conceded in the league, I don't think he ever looked like conceding. I don't really think he had a save to make. But that game encapsulates the defence in the direction that we're moving that way, that we can go away from home, score 3 goals, and keep the door shut at the same time. And this is when we look to start to build this goal difference. And because at the end of the day, if we did end up in a title race, it would come down to goal difference. So we're scoring goals at the other end of the park. Now it's about how do we keep them from conceding. Yeah.
Now, obviously, in between all this, lads, there is movement in and out the door. So we do have like summer signings, Austin Trusty, Arnie Engels, Adam Ida signs permanently, Paolo Bernardo. Now, we'd seen the lads from the season before, they were on loan with us. Alex Valle, like we mentioned earlier, Casper Schmeichel, Sinisalo, and then Luke McCown all comes in the door. What's your initial thoughts there, Barry, in terms of the summer window? So you've seen Matt O'Reilly exit, you've seen Big O go, Bernabe, guys like Kwon, the kind of fringe players are all kind of away. I think by that point, Haksabanovic is away. Lagerbielka goes over to Holland. So there's quite a bit of movement in and out, mate. So what's your thoughts there in terms of the movement either way? Were you happy with the summer window as well?
Yeah, I was happy. I was happy to see Bernardo come back to the club. I think at that time Celtic got him at a cut price.
Yeah.
I think we paid £2.5 million for him, and reportedly it was 6 that we were going to have to pay. So the club done well to get him on that kind of transfer. The whole saga with Adam Ida, it went on and on and on, didn't it? And I think most people think Celtic had to end up paying over the odds for Adam, which was unfortunate, but that's the way it was. A victim of his own success in that loan period that he was with Celtic. So I was pleased to see those two come back, and I think my overall feeling was that Celtic recruited in the right areas of the field. That all the areas I would have said personally Celtic need to do business in, they did. So I was happy. The jury was out on a few of those players. Alex Valle, I didn't know that much about. Arnie Engels the same.
Yeah.
Albeit he signed for a big transfer fee. But my feeling was as well that Brendan Rodgers was overseeing the transfers. I think that was the kind of perception in the summer. It was that these guys that were being signed were people who Brendan had personally approved of, which is, that's what you want. As a football fan, watching on, you want your manager to be the one making the signings, especially when you've got somebody as good as Brendan in charge. He has to be making those signings because, then at that point, it's really up to Brendan, succeed or fail, but it's on your own terms. There's nowhere to go, there's no excuses to make. Those are the conditions I like. That's what I prefer, and that seemed to happen. So at the time, I thought Trusty was an excellent signing because I had seen him doing in the Premier League. I think he's done okay, but the signings at that time, we prioritised all the right areas, and I thought at the end of all the signings, I thought the squad looked quite good in terms of depth and quality.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Barry there, Daniel, in terms of the summer window. I remember when you look at the contrast of the year before in the summer, and it was all kind of guys we'd never really heard of, but guys like Austin Trusty, as Barry says, a lot of people that know football or have seen Austin Trusty playing in the Championship and in the Premier League. Guys like Luke McCown. Luke was always a good player at Dundee. I thought that was an interesting signing in itself. Arnie Engels was a total surprise to me because we've went away and we've shattered our transfer record. We've actually done it twice in the same window. We signed Adam Eder for 9 million. And then we go and we blew to that. We signing Engels for 11, mate. So what's your thoughts there, mate, in terms of the summer window?
I feel like the summer window only helped bring the squad and the fans together, like that sense of unity that Barry touched on. Because that was a bit of a touchy point for Brendan's first season, is that we weren't spending the money, he wasn't getting the players that he wanted, and stuff like that. So to see Celtic actually lay down the marker and go, all right, these are the guys you want, boom, there's the money, go and get them, build this team. That again gave us a sense of excitement of the club's actually taking a step up here. They're being serious, they're starting to back them, they're starting to build the squad. Albeit I did feel defensively we could have picked up another option for left back, but at the time I was happy with the window, especially getting guys like Paulo Bernardo back in. I've said to you before many times, JP, about how good I think he is, and he just come off the back of a terrific season with us, and I thought with the way the club and the squad was moving, it just made the fans even more excited. The fact that the club was actually spending that extra bit of money to get the guys that Brendan wanted, rather than going, well, here's a guy for a cheaper option, go and do the same thing with him.
Yeah, 100%. Because it really gave you that feeling, lads, didn't it, that Brendan was fully, being backed, and that, it showed that the hierarchy were showing the trust in Brendan in order to take us forward. Obviously, we're gathering a wee bit of pace in this now, where we're going to be hitting the exciting parts of Celtic hitting the Champions League group stage, which then is a brand new stage, but we're not getting there first because on the 1st of September, Barry, there is a small matter of dealing with that mob across the city that we as we always seem to do every season, mate. And that is the first encounter with them that season, and we absolutely battle them 3-0, mate. What was your thoughts there?
Yeah, can I just wrap up on the summer business first? I'll be quick. I think that Celtic, Daniel's got a great point there, how that summer window brought the fans closer to the club because we saw the board backing Brendan. We saw the board spending money. But they're also really crafty about it as well. And I love this about Celtic. They were really crafty because they'd sold Matt Riley for big money. They had recruited money for Mikey Johnson, I think Young Vata.
There's another one that been right out of my head, man. Aye.
Anyway, he was good in pre-season for us. He scored a few goals. And anyway, He went, Bata, one or two others. So Celtic brought in some great money. And they probably only reinvested the money they had brought in. I don't think they really had to get into their account. No, the money that they brought in, they invested back into the squad. It was great business. Yeah, but going on to this game, I think when we talk about the derbies this season, I've heard some wild comments from both Celtic and Rangers fans about these derbies. And I would like to put it right here, right now. We played 5 derbies across the season. Celtic won 2, Rangers won 2, and we drew the other. So it's honours even. However, the games that had significance in those derbies, Celtic won both of them. And this was the first one of them. The season was early on at this point. Had Rangers came to Celtic and won, I think the points deficit would have been down. I don't know if it would have been 3 points or 4 points, something like that. And it would have gave them some momentum, something to build off. But we didn't let that happen. We beat them comfortably. The scoreline 3-0. Remember, Callum scored a cracking goal. But it was a game that we never looked like losing. It looked comfortable. It looked easy. There was no bother, Yeah, and I think I can't remember how many points it put us clear. But even after just a handful of games, you're looking at it and going, we've already got a healthy lead. And we played really well in the game as well, which was good.
Yeah, Daniel, obviously, that first game, in my opinion, just, again, that, as Barry was saying there, mate, it just kind of sets the tone in the, the season, because it really, when you won that 3-0 so comfortable, and by the way, it should have been more than 3, if you remember a game back, so you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, that really sets them back, because they're in a new, at that point, Philip Clement's still trying to get his team going in there as well, and they're in the midst of bringing in new players and try to set a standard for themselves.
Yeah.
But when you really do that to them, that sets them back really, really much there. And effectively, really, they're then playing catch-up for then on.
I definitely feel that game, the 1st of September, was, again, like I said previously, a big marker to go, right, we're not messing about here. We were a bit touch and go with last season, but now we're going to steamroll, get the heats down, and just get the job done and prove that we are better. And that's what we've done, because they went toe-to-toe with us, and we never looked like breaking our stride whatsoever. But again, it was a huge confidence boost, because, like Barry says, we'd already established a wee bit of a gap, because they hadn't picked up a couple of results, and we had a perfect record at this point. So we are now looking, after this game, it is now Aberdeen, who are at the same time got a perfect record. So at this point in the season, we're looking to them and going, this seems to be a bit of competition this year, which would be a sting for Rangers, because they now have went into this season gone, we're not that far after them. They don't start the season well. We steamroll them at Celtic Park and we don't look back. We don't compare ourselves to them for the rest of the season. It's other teams who can give us a bit of a challenge. And obviously it comes from Aberdeen with their incredible start to the season. So I feel like, again, it was a big confidence boost for us as a club and a squad to go, well, that's not a challenge. Who is going to be this season? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Totally. Moving on quickly, as we're probably going to have to do, because I didn't realise that how much in getting into this is, time is moving on swiftly. So moving on, obviously the 14th of September, Celtic then beat Hearts at Celtic Park 2-0. Again, another clean sheet, Barry, and we beat Rangers 3-0, 2-0. By that point, you're 1, 2, 3. You're now 4 games into the domestic season played in the league, and Celtic have still yet to concede a goal at Celtic Park. What you thinking at this point, mate?
Yeah, I just thought I did expect Celtic to get into the season that way after watching them in pre-season. After watching how they went about their business in pre-season, I go back to the speed and the tempo that they were playing those games at. you could see that Brendan was right on it. You could see that. And for the season prior, the fact that it was close at times, and Brendan probably lost control of the team a wee bit in that first season at points. He wasn't going to leave anything to chance. No manager of his calibre. And as the games were going on and we were chopping them off, you were just getting the feeling that this was how it was going to be. This was the Brendan that we knew in his first spell at the club. We had a manager who was just relentless. The winning mentality was just there. Every single game, the team was switched on. And personally, I was getting flashbacks at this point to Brendan's when he initially came to the club, and even as early as that. Seriously, I was starting to go, this could be an invincible season. I was getting those juicy feelings. Just with how switched on the players seemed to be. As soon as the first whistle went, you could see that it was just like methodical, just going about their business, doing what they had to do, getting the wins, clean sheet, up the road.
Yeah, 100%, man. I was the same. Obviously, watching that game, I wasn't here, so I wasn't even at the game at that day. I was in Santa Ponza. So my good lady, it was my 40th in February of 2024. So my good lady had taken me away to Santa Ponza for a long weekend. So I was over in the sun, and it was amazing because Arnie Engels gets his first goal for the club that day. Albeit it was a penalty, but it was just good to see Shanklin shouting big pressure, and I think it was the boy Halkett shouting 10 million. That'll be right. Well, it wasn't 10 million, it was 11 million, but hey ho. And it was good to see Arnie Engels score that day. So it was, and again, that was another game, if I remember back to, Celtic again, they won 2-0, but it could have been about 8. With the chances we missed that day. Engels hit the bar that day. I think he hit the post, I know, with another shot. He was very good that day. He was instrumental. He was starting to really come into the team at that point, and it was good thinking back. Right, now we're moving on to the juicy stuff. So Celtic then take us into our Champions League opener, which was the 18th of September. Celtic take on Slovan Bratislava, Daniel, at Celtic Park, and Celtic won 5-1. At that point, mate, where is your head? Because what a start to the Champions League campaign that is.
Oh no, absolutely, mate. I don't think I've ever seen Celtic play the way they did like that in a European match in my lifetime, definitely. I don't know about you guys, but in my lifetime, that's the best performance I've seen in a European setting, because usually with the start of the campaign, with these, I don't like to say lesser teams, but lesser known teams in Europe, we walk into them with big expectations, and sometimes we end up getting a nasty surprise. So it was good to go into it, set the tone early, score a barrel load of goals. The goal that we concede is an absolute screamer, by the way. That boy scores an absolute rocket.
That was a beauty.
So when a game where we've never looked no in control of the game, we've always looked settled, pinging the ball about nice and fresh, keeping it moving, attacking tempo and stuff like that. So again, that was another big marker for the fans to go, we might be on to something special here.
Aye, Barry, obviously, as Daniel says, the in that game, mate, being there or not was brilliant, and watching Celtic being so slick, and what a start to that campaign that was for us to really set us up. And as Daniel says, mate, the lad that does score against us at night, he's certainly been watching YouTube videos of me, that was for sure.
Well, I remember the game well. That was my birthday. That was my 40th. There you have it.
Wow.
I turned 40 that day. Yeah, I mean, listen, the football that night was outstanding. I was keeping my feet on the ground because I was aware that, albeit it was a Champions League game, Bratislava were one of the weaker teams in the competition. So, I wasn't getting too overwhelmed with the victory, but it's the football we played. It was the style that we played. The football was just tremendous. Big Scalesy, I remember getting a goal as well. You know, for all the slack he gets, big man get the opening goal, didn't he?
Yeah, the header.
The header. But I just again, it's building and building and building at this point, you know. And yeah, I know you're pressed for time, so I'm going to jump ahead at this point. You know, they were building momentum up, and the game that was going to come after that, the Champions League against Dortmund, we went into that game. I think most Celtic fans believed we could go there and win, and that wasn't, you know, wishful thinking. That was, we'd watched our team for pre-season up against good opposition in pre-season. We'd watched us build and build and build, and something special was happening at that time. So I went into that Dortmund game believing that we could go there and actually win the game. You know, we all know what happened. We got a big slice of humble pie on that night.
We're not even at that point yet, man, because we've got another juicy one just before it as well. But
I know we do. But the point is, with the Bratislava victory and the games that had preceded that, there was this growing sense that Celtic and the team that Brendan had built could go and compete with these top teams in the Champions League, even away from home.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Obviously, just after the Champions League, Celtic then go back into League Cup action on the 22nd of September, where we take on Falkirk at Celtic Park. And Celtic run out 5-2 victors. But the game certainly wasn't what the scoreline says it was, and Celtic won 5-2. Daniel, at this point, mate, I'm thinking to myself, especially when Celtic are losing at one point in the game, and you're saying to yourself, oh, don't do this again, man. This is a competition we went out. We went out early doors last season, you know, against Kilmarnock, and you're thinking to yourself, here we go. But obviously, as the game goes, Celtic come into the game. They have to then make substitutes, and effectively they come on and do their job, and Celtic run out 5-2 victors. At that point, Daniel, for me, at that point of the season, mate, even as Barry alludes to the Bratislava game, I remember thinking to myself, Falkirk's the best footballing team we have played at this point of the season. Yeah. They came to Celtic Park with a clear identity, mate. And no many teams will do this, mate. No many teams will come to Celtic Park and they'll set up against us to attack and, really have a go at us and really set about us in a way that I think, by all accounts, mate, took Celtic fans and Brendan Rodgers by surprise.
Yeah. I was at the game and I was actually quite looking forward to seeing this Falkirk team because they'd just been brought up to the Championship. They'd went unbeaten. We knew that they were this attacking format, that they like to go after teams. And I was excited to see it in action and see how they would face up. I know Celtic obviously started the game with a bit of a lesser team, and then we go 1 down, get the goal, and then we go 2-1 down, and then it's sitting in the stands. It's just absolute shock. We're just sitting there going, fair play for them to keep coming, and then we make the substitutions once we're back into the game, and I think we end up scoring 2 or 3 goals inside 10 minutes, and that again just boosts everybody's confidence, going, these players that we are starting are absolutely amazing. Like, this system that we play when we're at our full strength is just fantastic. But no, credit to Falkirk for coming and having a go, because like you said, JP, up to that point in the season, they were the biggest challenge that we'd had, which is mental to say, seeing as how we'd just seen our Rangers at Parkhead 3-0.
And obviously a Champions League game at Bratislava as well.
And a Champions League game as well, mate. Aye, so...
Yeah. I can't agree more with you, mate, in terms of the footballing aspect and everything put into that game. But obviously, Barry, yourself, mate, at that point, mate, you see, obviously we're going to see a lot more of them now that have been promoted this season. But at that point yourself, were you impressed with Falkirk the way they came and set about us that day, mate?
I went to that game with my best pal, and I don't get to see him as often as I would like. And I'm in the stadium thinking, jeez, I don't want to put a damper on the day. I don't want Celtic to lose.
I don't want to see him again.
Aye, well, maybe just see him under different circumstances, you know. Bad omen. But again, I didn't read too much into it at the time because Celtic rotated the team that day heavily. It was the first time in the season Brendan had rotated the team. Before that game, Brendan had pretty much chosen the same 11 for every game. And I think he had made like 7 or 8 changes. I remember Valle started, it was the first chance we'd seen him. Trusty started. I think Bernardo started, hadn't been playing much. I think he changed the full front three. I mean, you know, and much as what Daniel said there, you know, I was looking forward to seeing Falkirk doing. They didn't disappoint. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
But the story of that game is the changes Celtic did. And when they did make those changes, by the way, it doesn't always happen this way. You know, when they brought the so-called, you know, bigger players onto the pitch, it did have an instant reaction, and we did score quick fire goals. You know, it doesn't always work like that. It did on that day. But I'll tell you something. That game sort of stopped me in my tracks a wee bit. I thought, okay, we've been absolutely outstanding up to this point, but it just does go to show the strength and depth. It's there to an extent, but I think you could see that Brendan didn't have the luxury of making that many changes, you know, and I don't think he done it again. I don't think he made that many changes again. So, especially on a cup competition. So, it was worrying times because, again, you know, with this manager, you know, and the start we made, I think in your mind, and if Brendan's done this days, do you know what I mean? In your mind, you're thinking of a treble already.
Mm-hmm.
So that was threatening. That was threatening the fans that day. So no likey.
Aye, they were tugging my heartstrings that day, weren't they?
Right.
I mean, you nearly fell out with your best pal at half time that game. Know what I mean? It was. You think to yourself, "Oh my goodness, man! It's don't want you to come back with me. You're no coming back here again with me." But, aye. And then obviously moving on, we then travel up to Perth at the end of September, and we absolutely annihilate St Johnstone 6-0.
Yep.
So we're now at our 6th game here domestically. We've still not conceded a goal, Daniel. I mean, I don't think I've ever witnessed a better start to the season for us, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, again, we've not really seen Casper tested in the league. So we're getting excited because, again, our goal difference is nothing but positive. And we've already had a couple of big results already.
Yeah.
And then we come out and we score 6 goals. And again, it's just an example of the team just clicking because Perth, although we've had some big wins, it's still a hard place to go.
Yep.
The pitch at times is a bit challenging, the weather, things like that. So I think it summed us up at the point in the season that we were able to go up to a place that can be challenging and just absolutely stroll it again.
Yeah.
And get just further boosted everybody's confidence that we can walk into that environment and take away the 3 points and add 6 onto the goal difference.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And obviously, Barry, that game, mate. But that night was just. I mean, Brendan then speaks about, you know, he wanted them to go into it with a Champions League mindset. But at that point, you think to yourself, man, we're playing St Johnstone, Brendan. My goodness, and it just shows you then, mate, where the focus and mindset was for the team.
Yeah, and Kyogo was scoring goals for fun as well.
Yeah,
I think he had a couple in that game as well, and I think Adam Ida had come on and scored a goal in that game as well. And you're just purring at the options that they had at that time. You know, you're looking at Kun, Kyogo, Maeda, which was the first choice front three at that point, and was all the way through really. Till Kyogo departed. But then Ida was coming on and contributing. And the goals were coming from different areas of the pitch. And I think as well as that, you know, watching Celtic at that time, watching Kyogo in the team at that time, this idea that, you know, Kyogo couldn't play in Brendan's team, Kyogo couldn't really do what Brendan was asking, I think that was beginning to fade into the background at this point as well. And again, just the theme really the kind of ongoing thread here is just the synchronicity. You know, the team were playing, they were fluid. You know, Ryan's saying it was 6-12, but where are you right, wee man?
I thought it was 14.
14, that's it. So I think you could pretty much say the same thing for these games. You know, as we were chalking them off, just fluid, clear identity, players that were doing exactly what Brendan was asking, happy fans, entertained, winning title matches. Just, it was all hunky dory, really.
Absolutely. You can't ask for any better. And then, Daniel, we come to the game that Barry's already mentioned. Where we go to Germany. And as Barry says, mate, you're a Celtic fan at that point, we're flying, and you think to yourself, we could actually go here and get a result, because you've watched the team across the water go and do it a couple of years previous to you, and you're saying to yourself, well, if they can go and, you know, do a bit of... But you're not foreseeing the start we had that night to the game, where we play a couple of misplaced passes, and then for some reason, man, everybody to your man, just the heads totally go. We concede an early goal. Maeda then equalises, and you think to yourself, right, here we go. And then all of a sudden, man, Adeyemi takes control of the game, and there's a couple of passes getting made, and then one or two errors happen, man, and we just absolutely that night just capitulate totally. For whatever reason. I do not know. Where is your head after that, mate? Because I just remember feeling, I don't think I've ever, as a Celtic fan, Daniel, it's probably the most empty I've ever felt watching that game. Now, I sat there in disbelief for a good hour and a half after the game, thinking to myself, what the hell has just happened there? And yeah, I mean, probably as all, a lot of Celtic fans were angry that night as well. But I'm a bit, my mantra is always, when we win anything, Daniel, I don't get too carried away when we do it. And see, when we don't win, and when we do get beat like that, I don't really get too disappointed about it either. Obviously, it isn't nice to watch, but especially a scoreline like that, so heavily at that point of the season, you think to yourself, well, we beat Bratislava 5-1, we've just beat St Johnstone 6-0, and then we've slaughtered here 7-1. Yeah, that was, by the way, that could have been 10 that night. Yeah. Look back to that game. What were you thinking there, mate?
I think heading into the game, I was similar to a lot of Celtic fans, because Dortmund hadn't really made a good start to the season. We were flying. So I went into the game with a lot of belief, and then, like you say, we go 1-0 down quite early. Then we managed to get ourselves back in the game, and it's right, let's click on. And then again, it just collapsed. And that was a big statement for Dortmund that night, because their key players turned up in a game that they needed to win at that point. I think anyway, it was a must-win game for them under a newish manager. So I feel it was very, very sobering, because we were on cloud nine. We hadn't had any challenge up until this point. So it was a very, very sobering defeat to take as a Celtic fan. But after the game, I think the fallout became, here we go again. This is when a wee tiny bit of doubt starts to creep into the mind. It's, are we going to see the same old Celtic in Europe? Give us a good start. Like, usually it's qualifiers, but we didn't need to play them. So usually we get a good run at qualifiers. We look good. Start the league well. Pick up a good win in the cup, and then capitulate in Europe. So I felt like that was a lot of the census when we left that game. It was, is this going to be the way the group goes? But it was a sobering one. It was one we had to take on the chin and pick ourselves up and go again. But it was a tough one to watch, especially after how well we'd started the season.
And Barry, obviously you've touched on it already, mate. You want to add to that night?
Yeah, I think the problem with that game was we went into that game really believing we could win.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because of the way we were performing, but Daniel mentioned it there. Dortmund were going through a bit of a mini crisis at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm of the mindset that Brendan himself fancied that. I think he fancied that game. I think he took the team there, and I think that he sort of gave them full license to play the way they had been playing domestically. That's my view on it, and they paid the ultimate price for that. But this is football, and these are the lessons you learn. I can see why Brendan done it. I can see why he went there and he said, let's have a go. Let's play the way we've been playing. Let's put it on them. But that quality, despite Dortmund's form being poor at that time, that quality was there. And I remember seeing comments from some of the players afterwards saying they were really surprised that Celtic played that expansive, that Celtic left the gaps that they left. And I think, as Francis says there, getting above our station, I'm not sure that's the words I would use. I think Celtic were really confident.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
I was as well, by the way, I was as well.
Listen, again, it goes back to those pre-season games where we had beat Chelsea.
I took us to beat Dortmund, and we were in the Morven doing the chat before it with William Glavin, and I went, no, Celtic 1-2-1.
Yeah, that's why the fallout for that game was so big. That's the most disheartened I've felt as a Celtic fan in a lot of years. But it was because of how built up I was for the actual game. I went into it really believing Celtic could win. And again, to re-emphasise that Celtic had beat Man City and they'd beat Chelsea in pre-season. They'd beat good opposition, and we had performed well all the way up to that game at Dortmund. I think we were right to fancy it, and Brendan was too. I don't think he would ever make that mistake again, ever. And he learned from it pretty quickly. Again, it could have been worse, by the way. And afterwards, that night, when the dust had settled and you're lying in your bed at night, all you can really think about is those goals flying in. I just thought, as a Celtic fan, I just thought, my disappointment that night was I felt Brendan had a responsibility that night to salvage a bit of pride. When the third and fourth goals were going in, I thought, put another defender on, pull them back another 20 yards. He didn't do any of that.
No.
So that was disappointing. But listen, I'll tell you what, we didn't have bounced back to it.
Yeah, no, listen, 100%. Obviously, we're coming to that. Obviously, right after that, I'm going to move us on slightly. I'll talk through these quickly. Celtic up to Ross County. We won 2-1, but again, it's one of those, you could see by that point, lads, the performance in Dortmund really took effect on the team because they just looked knackered that day. We played Ross County in the game afterwards. There's then an international break where Celtic go and play a friendly over in against Sligo Rovers. They won 3-2. Not really much to say on that. We then come back to league action the 19th of October, where Celtic take on a big test. By this point, as Daniel mentioned earlier, mate, about Aberdeen flying as well. Now, at that point, Aberdeen were still unbeaten. Bearing in mind they beat the team across the water as well in Pittodrie. So they're sitting second, narrowly, just in goal difference at this point, and they're on our tails. And they come to Celtic Park, mate. Celtic go 2-0 up, and then again, take the eye off the ball.
Yeah.
And we end up drawing a game 2 each. What's your thoughts there?
I feel like that game was that was a big statement for us to go into that game confident, go 2-0 up, half time, we're absolutely cruising. And then second half, that's when what we see in the second half of the season, that just not turning up, like taking the eye off the ball, like you said, JP. Passing was too slow. Obviously, Aberdeen just take their chances, and that's when we start to go, right, we might have a bit of a challenge after them here, because I think up until that point it was still fairly even leading into that game. So that was a big test, definitely, because at that point Celtic fans were viewing Aberdeen as number 2. That was the team you had to beat, because we weren't worried about them across the water. So I feel like that game was another big hit, especially after Dortmund. We're sitting there going, how are we 2-0 up and then capitulating like that in the second half and allowing them chances to go and score?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, Barry, that was a great night for the channel, because that night we did our live event with Joe Muller and the Morven. So it was a really good night for us. But the scoreline that day, actually, I would say it's a bit disappointing then, because it was a really good chance again for Celtic to put a bit of daylight between second place in the league and really kick us into that kind of mold. But it just wasn't to be, as Daniel says. But you're in at half time, you're winning 2-0. You then draw the game 2 each, mate. What was your thoughts that day?
Well, the scoreline totally flattered Aberdeen. I mean, the first half, Celtic were pretty comfortable. And the second half, if I remember right, they got back into the game with a deflected goal. And then the equalising goal they scored was a real bit of quality. I mean, the pass through and the way the boy got through and finished it was an excellent goal. No issues with that. The last 15, 20 minutes of that game, Celtic could have scored 3 goals. We were all over them. And again, that type of game, that didn't disturb me too much, that game. I was disappointed. I think Daniel's right to highlight the sort of complacency. By the way, the very same complacency that would creep in later on in the season when things were wrapped up, which is something Brendan's mindful of with this squad, and will need to be corrected. That will need to be corrected into the next season. I think Brendan will be all over that. But no, the game itself, I wasn't impressed with Aberdeen in terms of how they played. I didn't think they were great. I thought, as I said, the equalising goal was a wee touch of class. But again, after that, Celtic scored a good few goals. Yeah. It's always disappointing to drop points. But again, I still wasn't looking at Aberdeen with any real, looking at them as title contenders or anything like that. I just thought, Celtic took the eye off the ball a wee bit.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Moving on again, lads. We're moving on to Champions League at this point. Again, 23rd of October, Celtic travel to Italy, to Bergamo, to take on Atalanta. Daniel, I remember sitting in the Morven again with our good man, Mr. William Glavin, and Ryan was like a bag of gingies even talking about this game. He was just random Jimmy Calderwood's rosary beads off his guy, sitting in his pockets at a game at Parkhead. And Ryan actually took Atalanta to beat Celtic 5-0. I still can't believe this. He took Celtic to lose 5-0.
Stop throwing him on much, JP.
No. Listen, I've not even got a big enough. By the way, hold on. By the way, I've not even got a big enough double decker that I could put him under, Barry, for this, man. I'm telling you, you'll never have that done. Honestly, imagine taking a team to Gubbas 5-0. How dare he, man? He's lucky. I never parked him off this channel for that part. But Daniel, all kidding aside, mate, Celtic go to Atalanta. Immediately, right away, people's thoughts must be, by the way, we went to Dortmund, get leathered. Where are you there, mate, in terms of that game?
Absolutely, and I feel like the media kind of went down that direction as well, because obviously we'd seen this Atalanta side blowing teams aside. I think they come off the back of a very, very strong Bayer Leverkusen in the Europa League final. And they're a great side, don't get me wrong. So I feel like media-wise it was moving in that direction of, can we see a repeat of the Dortmund game here? But Celtic done extraordinarily well at putting everybody back into place and going, no, we are a quality side as well. We know how to turn up. And again, that was a huge defensive display, because especially second half, they battered and battered and battered the door, and Celtic never looked like that's how, as the game went on, I grew in confidence that we're going to get something here. And then obviously the game starts to open up a bit, and then you go, do you go for it, or do you just take what you've got? And I think at that point, a lot of Celtic fans were saying, just take what you've got and sit in. Because a lot of fans actually, including myself, celebrated that win. Celebrated it like a win.
That's what it felt like.
I felt like a win, because we've went to one of the best sides in Europe, organisation-wise, football-wise, talent-wise as well now. And we've frustrated them and got a result in it. And that's when people's minds started to click away for the Dortmund game, going, no, Celtic are going to be different in Europe this year. And that's again where the club and the fans unite a wee bit, and a bit of confidence going, let's get behind the team and do something special.
Yeah, Daniel, I don't know if maybe you'll just need to adjust your microphone, mate. There's a wee bit of an echo coming for you, mate, slightly when you're speaking. Not every word, but there's just a wee bit there just in case it's maybe rubbing on your t-shirt. But before I bring you in and that, Baz, I remember at Atalanta, I was watching a game with my dad, and as Daniel says, absolutely incredible, mate, to go there. I know we had to defend for a lot of the game, and the momentum was with Atalanta that night. But again, mate, it was a pragmatic approach for Brendan. And I don't think any Celtic fan, including myself, seen that coming, mate. How was you feeling on that?
Well, I don't know if Ryan's still watching, but I'm going to cut him some slack, because I don't think Ryan was the only Celtic fan fearing the worst getting into that game. And I think all of us were traumatised with that performance and result. There you go. The performance and result in Dortmund, I think, caused a lot of trauma, and we were fearing the worst going to play them. And you said we had to defend a lot. I would say that was all we done. That was a game. It was an outstanding result. And at the time, it felt like it could be an important point in the context of getting through the group phase. But the actual game itself was horrendous. I mean, Celtic it was cross after cross after cross after cross, attack after attack. I mean, the only thing Atalanta didn't do was score. But they absolutely, they totally butchered us.
Aye.
But we came away with a point, and it was good to see that Brendan was finally capable as a Celtic manager of going away from home in Europe and just digging it out. And for me, in a competition where the aim is to get through the group phase, if at certain games you need to go there and just absolutely stink it out, get a result, get back on the plane home, and that was the day we done it. Would you want to see Celtic play like that away from home? In Europe all the time? I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't. But at the same time, I wouldn't want us to see us go and play as open, as expansive as we did against Dortmund.
Yeah.
So you're looking at those two performances, and some kind of hybrid, somewhere in the middle of those two would be ideal. Good luck trying to get that blend. But it was, I think, as a fan base, it was just what the doctor ordered. We needed some relief after that Dortmund, because full disclosure, I went into that game petrified.
I think a lot of people did, mate, myself included, silently, but I did say it would have been a positive result for us when I was chatting about it. I'm going to move us on quite swiftly, because after that we took on Motherwell at Fir Park. We beat them 3-0. We then takes on Dundee at Celtic Park, and we win 2-0. So again, a couple of good positive results for us moving forward. At that point, lads, when the Atalanta game came, I thought we really gained momentum in terms of confidence. I think after the 7-1 down we took in Dortmund, to then going away to Bergamo, actually really, the players were like, well, hold on a minute, we can actually do this. We can. They fully believed that they could do it. We then gets to the League Cup semi, Daniel, and again we face Aberdeen. Daniel, you're on mute, mate. Are you there? You're not now. And Celtic just go and absolutely annihilate Aberdeen, mate. 6-0. Again, it's a semi-final. Nobody expects, all these games are normally tight, they're normally, boom. And bearing in mind at this point, we're now in the 2nd of November, and Celtic just go and leather Aberdeen. Now, for me, Daniel, I don't know how you feel before I bring you in, we killed Aberdeen mentally there. We battered them that night, we absolutely killed them mentally, because they then go on a 14-game run where they get beat constantly in the league after that. So for me, it really it really battered Aberdeen's confidence.
Oh, aye, definitely. I think walking into that game, Celtic and Aberdeen were a bit toe-to-toe. It was a bit easy, peachy at the time. And then, obviously, Celtic came out and just absolutely run all over the top of them. And I think that definitely, I agree, that killed Aberdeen's momentum moving into the season. Because Celtic, again, just moved from strength to strength, level to level. And Aberdeen take that down and they capitulate a wee bit. They have a wee mid-season blip. So I feel like that was a big, huge statement for us to then go and take that team and take them on and go, right, if this is going to be our biggest challenge for the season, this is going to be the number 2. Let's go on again and prove, after the result of Celtic Park especially, why we are better and why we are number 1.
Yeah, 100%. We were, at that point, we were absolutely flying. And again, confidence just grows. Because then we go from that, Barry, into another Champions League game, mate, at the 10th of November. And we face a team for Germany in Leipzig at Celtic Park. And for me, I don't know about anybody else, Celtic fan-wise, this is my game of the season, last season. We just absolutely annihilated. By the way, we went to goal down this night. And we absolutely annihilated them. So, I never seen that coming either. It was just amazing to see, Barry.
Yeah, no, I think Brendan Rodgers himself, reviewing the season, has picked that as his favourite game. And I think the reason he picked it was the performance level. I think that game, after Dortmund and obviously going to Atalanta and Bergamo and getting a result there, I think this was the kind of recovery complete. This was the healing complete at this point. Because this was a big club, came to Celtic Park, took the lead in the game, and our football that day was as good as you're likely to see it. It was just top class, and it all came together on the night, and it was just great to get a big win over a big club in Europe.
100%, mate. Moving on again. So we came off that win. We go to Tynecastle. We batter Hearts 4-1. We absolutely leather Hearts 4-1. We then come to the Champions League again, where Celtic take on Club Brugge again at Celtic Park, Daniel. For me, again, I was really impressed with Club Brugge. I like watching good football teams, mate. I was really impressed with the way Club Brugge set about us that night as well.
Mm-hmm.
I never expected that sort of level to come to Celtic Park and do what they done.
Yep.
But yeah, I was really impressed. The disappointing part of that night for me was we gave them 45 minutes of a starty.
Yeah.
Because the second half we take control of the game. What was your thoughts? Because I really enjoyed being at Celtic Park that night when that was happening. And it was good to see a team play that way again, like Falkirk did earlier in the season. But then to go and do what we done to them in the second half, we could have very easily ran out winners that night. But obviously we draw 1-1 at the Champions League, mate. So how are you feeling at that point, Daniel? Were you disappointed we didn't win the game, or do you feel we should have won the game?
I think initially leading into the game, Celtic fans had that bit of confidence back about themselves in the Champions League, especially. I feel like I think I remember saying Celtic were evens to go and win that game. Now, it's been a long time since we were evens to win a game in the Champions League if it's no lesser opposition. So I feel like that was a big factor because they were a half decent side. Obviously, I think they were another team that was having a bit of a itchy peachy season. So I was impressed that they turned up. Just unfortunately, we gave them a goal. We gave them a head start.
Yep.
And it rattled as it did. Like even in the atmosphere around the stadium, I think all of the fans, they weren't expecting Club Brugge to actually come and play some good football, and albeit for 45 minutes, they looked very, very, very comfortable. So I think it was a bit, especially in the first half, I feel it was a bit of a wake-up call for us
Yeah.
to then go and get a result out of that game, because the way the
Yep.
game was heading, it looked like it was going to be a 1-0 defeat, where we've turned up, but we just can't score. And then obviously we get the goal, and that lifts the crowd again, and then obviously we're looking to push and try and win the game. But for the way we started, I felt like I was quite happy to get the 1 each draw, but we should have done more to try and win it, I feel.
Yeah, I was the same. I was, as the game went on, Baz, I thought we could have went on and really won the game. But I was impressed at the same time with watching Club Brugge come and do that to us in the first half.
Yeah, well, I was at that game as well. I was, I get Mr. Clifford's ticket for that game, so I was there, and I think that night. That's the reality of Champions League football.
Yeah.
That is the stark reality. A club like Bruges can come to Celtic Park and, they could come and win. I know they didn't win on the night. But they're a right good football side. They were proper ready for that game, and they played some good stuff, and we were evenly matched in the game. I thought we'd done well to come back in that. Having said that, we started really poorly, and we did allow Bruges to get on the ascendancy. But overall, I thought a draw was a fair result on the night, and I thought Celtic done really well to get that back, and to leave the game with something rather than nothing, and it turned to be an important point. I think Bruges, as the competition went on to prove themselves as a good side as well. They qualified. But yeah, I think we've done well on the night to get back into that game, and I think a draw was a decent result.
I totally agree. Again, I'm going to move us on because we're now approaching the kind of end to get us there. We've got a couple of things we need to go over. So obviously off the back of that Bruges game, lads, we're hitting the 39th, the 30th, 39th, Jesus. I'm thinking about the age I want to be again instead of the actual date of what I'm reading. The 30th of November, where we play Ross County at Celtic Park, we battle them 5-0. We then go to Aberdeen, we won 1-0 up there. I remember that game, it was horrible, the weather was really bad, it was a game of Tati scores, each a goal. We then takes on Hibs at Celtic Park, we battle them 3-0. We're then moving, Daniel, to the Champions League again on the 10th of December, and we go to Zagreb.
Yeah.
Again, as Barry says, it becomes a reality in that level of, doesn't matter the opposition you're up against, it more matters of what damage can be done, basically, when, if you're not at it. I know that game, Celtic drew nothing each, but at that point, I remember that game, mate, at that point, it wasn't a great football game, it wasn't a great, spectator spectacle for us to watch. But again, a lot of Celtic fans went into it with that, we should be beating them and we should be doing, as Barry says a moment ago there, it is the Champions League, so sometimes you need to be more focused on where we are, really, because it's not, you're up against a team who are champions of that country, and they're probably better than your Aberdeens and teams like that here, so a different kind of challenge for us overall.
Yeah, I feel like walking into the Zagreb game, that was a real chance to get a marker down and then go, right, let's move forward, get the win under the belt, sets us up lovely for moving into the latter stages, because at this point we're starting to think about that. Do you know what I mean? We're confident. The only really bad result we've had is Dortmund. So I feel like my feeling walking away from that game was really underwhelming, because Zagreb sat off us all night, and we appeared to do the same thing, which I just don't understand. Like, they were sitting off us and sitting in. We were pinging the ball about. We were breaking them down when we chose to. But again, I feel like this is again another game where it comes into this sort of complacency where Celtic looked toothless that night. And I feel like we should have walked away with for that game with a victory, because everybody, the build-up, the media is, oh, Zagreb, hard place to go, blah, blah, blah. 2/3 of the stadium was closed. So that atmosphere wasn't there. We were clearly a better team than them, and we just never looked like at any point we were going to go for the game. Substitutions were just routine subs. Like it was a strange one, because it almost as if Brendan was hanging on for a draw, expecting them to come out the traps, and then last 10 minutes he went, all right, let's actually go and try and go for it. And by then it's too late. They've sat in all game. They know the direction they need to take the game. Do you know what I mean? So I feel it was underwhelming.
Yeah, obviously yourself, guys. How do you feel on that result?
No, I think Brendan had learned his lessons from Dortmund. He was never going to get into that game. I mean, that fixture was all set up for Celtic to win it. Zagreb's form was really poor at the time. You know, we were playing well. By all accounts, Celtic should have went and won that game on paper. But Brendan, he went into that game cautious. And I think by that point, he'd done the numbers, he'd crunched the numbers, and he knew a draw in that game was sufficient. He didn't play for a draw, but he knew that would be enough. And that did turn out to be the case. But I can feel Daniel's disappointment. I was disappointed in that game. I think Celtic had a big chance to win that. Should have won it. I think they had a lot of injuries at the time as well. The form was really poor. But again,
Larry, you actually done the pre-match.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
It is Champions League. Now, if Celtic go into that game and they get their tails up and they go for the throw, Zagreb score an early goal, and we end up losing that game 1-0. What's the narrative going to be after that? Goodness sake, Brendan, we only really needed a point. So sometimes you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. The reality is that was a good point for us. That got us through, you know, along with the other points we'd accumulated. So it was a disappointing night, though. I will admit that. I thought Celtic could have done more. But I think towards the end of the game, I think Brendan had looked at it, knew the numbers were looking good at that point, and settled for the draw.
Yeah, I agree. Then, lads, there comes afterwards, and we go to the League Cup final, where again we get our teeth into another derby versus the mob across the water. And Daniel, obviously there's an opportunity to win the first trophy, mate. And that's what Celtic do. They go and win the first trophy. Now, cups for me are a bonus. I've always said this to Celtic fans when I'm speaking about it. And for me, it doesn't matter how you do it. As long as all counts is who's on the podium at the end of that. And, you know, you're lifting the trophy high above your head, mate. And for that point, mate, I'm so proud of the team because what they've put into early in the season. It was a competition. The players and the manager had banged on about wanting to get back and wanting, you know, because they had done it the season before, and we managed to do it. And again, I think in the way we done it was just sweeter because it really angered the team across the water as well.
Yeah. I feel that game, leading into it, Celtic expected to have the game done by half time.
Yeah.
And when that wasn't the reality, the wee bit of doubt started to creep in again. We started to switch off. Conceded some quite questionable goals, but I feel like in that game, that's when the complacency started to come to a head. Like a few boys started to switch off, things like that, and then we show glimpses throughout this. That's what I've always said about this game. It was always played in like 15-minute segments where Celtic looked excellent, and then 15 minutes where we didn't. And they managed to capitalise in the times that we didn't. So don't get us wrong, this was their chance. This was a one-off to go, well, we'll not get you in the league, but we got you in this, and they didn't manage to do it. So it was a further stinger, and I was proud of the way the team managed to go and win the game, even though we kept getting pegged back and pegged back and pegged back. But leading into penalties, I was never questioned. I never questioned. That shows again the confidence that the team had at this point in the season, that I was never nervous at all that we would win this game. It was just a matter of time rather than how. So leading into penalties, I was really, really confident. And then all of our penalties are spectacular. Casper makes the save, and then Maeda steps up with a miss kick and manages to steer it into the net. So it was a great, because that game meant more than just that cup. That was surpassing them in trophies, well, supposed trophies, but surpassing that tally. Do you know what I mean? Most wins in an Old Firm as well. Do you know what I mean? So it meant a lot more than just the League Cup final.
Yeah, you're new to the channel, Daniel, so the term Old Firm doesn't get used quite often on here, mate. It's normally Glasgow Derby. We'll let you away with that one, mate. We'll call it Strike One as we move forward, pal. But Baz, obviously, as Daniel says, it was a game of different emotions as well with the way the game, one team went in front, the other team went in front. But again, it just shows the mentality of our group to go and actually, really step up at the penalty shootout. And as Daniel says, every one of our penalties that day were absolutely sublime.
Yeah, I think this is where our football club, and particularly Brendan Rodgers, were a victim of our own success. The remit in a cup competition is to win the cup. And Celtic done that on that day, and yet there was still an element of a fan base afterwards were a bit disgruntled. And I find that hard to believe. But it did happen. I think when Kuhn scores to make it 3-2 so late in the game, you're thinking, job done. What a way to win a cup final. Absolute bliss. And you go for that within a minute or two. Danilo, I think it was, gets the equaliser, and it's like, God, what do we need to do to win this game? I don't know anybody who expects to get into a cup final and win comfortably. That's not the reality of football. I don't know any country in the world where a team rolls up in a cup final. Look at the shock at PSG turning over Inter Milan in the cup final of Champions League. Shockwaves. That doesn't happen in cup finals. It certainly doesn't happen in cup finals against your biggest rivals, regardless of the gap between the clubs. Cup finals are a unique thing, so it's no surprise that it went all the way to penalties. But what matters is whose name's on the trophy at the end there. And once again, we come back to these derbies this season just past there. The most important derby of them all was that one, and it went our way.
Yeah. And it's always a bonus, isn't it, when you lift that season, you get that cup and you're holding it high above your head, because it's definitely, it doesn't matter. Like I say, cups are a total bonus to your season. However, when you win, it's just elation for the whole club, everybody involved, the staff, everybody that works towards these things, and the fans just get another great day out. I was out that day with the lads from the channel, Ryan and Alan and Big Bev, who sponsors the channel through AB Entertainment. We were all out that day, and we were in Lynch's bar, and it was just a great day for us all to have together, and to watch Celtic lift another cup, lads, was so special. But obviously, moving on quickly, we're now coming into the end of tonight. So obviously after that, lads, we then play Dundee United up at Tannadice, where we draw nothing each. We take on Motherwell at Celtic Park on Boxing Day. Forgot to say Merry Christmas, by the way. We're now at that point in this chat. It's Christmas time, and Boxing Day we leather Motherwell 4-0. And the very last game that we are going to chat about, and that's what the greatness about this is, because this is part one, lads. We have now arrived. 1 hour and 45 minutes it took us to get here, but we have now arrived at the end of our chat, Like I says, there is a second part of this, folks, and Ryan Allen and William Glavin will pick this up. It will be recorded tomorrow, but it won't be out until Thursday. So due to circumstances, the lads won't be going live. They'll be doing it recorded and getting it out for you on Thursday. But Daniel, obviously, to finish up, mate, back-to-back 4-0 wins for Celtic versus, one at Celtic Park against Motherwell and then the next one at Celtic Park again against St Johnstone, mate. 8 goals, no reply again. You're moving in towards the new year and you think to yourself, here we go, we're flying here.
Yeah, I think the two victories were the best possible outcome to bounce back for that. What was a really pretty poor display against Dundee United in that 0-0. I think we had 32 shots or something like that, 17 on target, and just couldn't score. So, but positives heading into the new year were many points clear at the top of the league by now. There's a big gap in all directions. We've got a trophy in the bag already, and then we go up again and manage to beat a very poor St Johnstone side. But it's just winning games very comfortably, and that relentlessness that we've seen so far up to this point in the season, where we just keep going and get as many goals, and it's just rattling that goal difference. That's all I can say. It's just pushing, and it was just a great end to the year, which had been an outstanding year for the club.
Yeah, I mean, even I'm like a kid when Santa's coming again, even thinking about this, Barry. Obviously, you're looking back over this. I mean, this is only one half of the season. The lads have still to chat about the next part of the season. But looking back here, mate, I mean, just the excitement of how well, Celtic are doing as a club and how well we're getting on. It's just magnificent, mate.
Well, a few things I think to note here. First of all, there was no winter break. So we played a lot of football in the month of December, a hell of a lot of football. The pitches are terrible at that time of the year as well. And Celtic went undefeated in that month. So, we're still okay. The performance levels are maybe dropping a wee bit. They're a wee bit up and down, but we're still churning out the result after result after result. And in that calendar year, 2024, I believe I'm right in saying we only lost 2 games, Dortmund and Hearts. Now, somebody can correct me on that if there was another one, but I'm sure I saw that around about that time that we'd actually finished the calendar year and we'd only lost 2 games, which is unthinkable, the amount of games that we play. So yeah, kind of recapping the part of the season that we've covered here. The football was excellent. The results were first class. We had won the games that mattered, and yeah, we've teed the boys up lovely for part 2.
Yeah, we definitely have. Aye, as I said, Daniel, it's been a very good chat tonight. I know we're kind of mid-story, mate, and I'm afraid this is where we sign off. I'm afraid because, like I've said it already a couple of times. The boys will pick up from probably the next part of the which is the January window and the rest of the season. So it's been a lovely chat again with you, Daniel, and cheers again, mate, for your input tonight.
No problem, Barry. Lovely to speak to you as well, mate. I feel like we've had the good part to talk. Well, the best part to talk about. And we've teed it up lovely, like Barry says, for the boys to continue in the second half.
You just rubbed it into him now. We've had the best part to talk about here. They'll probably be sitting there spewing and watching us, going, yes. But no, Barry, same yourself, mate. It's been really good getting you back on the channel. I'd love you to be on more. I know due to circumstances, mate, sometimes that's not possible. But it's been a really good chat again tonight.
Yeah, thanks, big man. Thanks for having us on, and thanks just all the guys, Ryan, Alan, yourself, Daniel, for the content he's putting out, and it's always good stuff. I do apologise if there was any echoing coming from my side. I can't explain it. I'm in my brother's house. He's in the room behind me, and he's got the unrestricted view on. So, Sean, turn your volume down. But it's been magic to be on with these guys. Always a pleasure.
No, 100%. And to everybody that's tuned in with us across the platforms, thank you very much for staying with us for so long. I know that was quite a bit to get through. And by the way, that was only one half of the season. So I do hope the second half of the season doesn't feel quite as long, if it does feel as long for you. But again, thanks for all your comments. I'm really sorry I've not been able to get all the comments put up. And I'm really sorry I've not been able to get through all your comments as well. But there's been some really interesting points tonight. I take everything into consideration, and the lads will pick up for the second part of tonight. But for everybody from the channel, I want to say a massive hail, hail. Take care, and we will see you all again very soon. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.